Welcome to Serial Killers with Ben Carter. I'm your host, Ben Carter. A chilling undercurrent of dread and horror shrouded 12205 Imperial Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio. From 2007 to 2009, this unassuming two-story structure bore silent witness to a reign of terror, its dark secret concealed within its crumbling walls. This was the domain of Anthony Sowell, a man whose outward normality belied an insidious, monstrous reality. Sowell was a man of contradictions, a serial killer who preyed on the vulnerable, a predator in sheep's clothing. Sowell's early life hinted at the darkness that lay within. Born in 1959, he was one of 7 children raised in East Cleveland, a neighborhood grappling with poverty and crime. The familial environment was far from nurturing. His mother was reportedly abusive, while his father was a non-entity, absent from his life. Sowell was raised primarily by his single mother and a rotating cast of uncles and aunts, a chaotic upbringing that offered little stability or affection. In his adolescence, Sowell sought an escape from his tumultuous home life, enlisting in the United States Marine Corps at the age of 18. He served for 7 years, earning a reputation as a disciplined Marine and amassing a series of commendations for good conduct. Yet beneath this veneer of respectability, a sinister undercurrent was brewing, one that would soon send shockwaves throughout Cleveland and the nation. After receiving an honorable discharge in 1985, Sowell returned to Cleveland, his commendable military service a stark contrast to the path he would soon embark upon. Over the next 2 decades, he would descend into a life marred by substance abuse, violence, and a string of criminal convictions. His first major brush with the law came in 1989 when he was charged with kidnapping and raping a pregnant woman. Sowell pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. But this prison stint did little to reform him. Instead, it seemed to have fueled his violent tendencies, paving the way for his subsequent reign of terror. Upon his release in 2005, Sowell moved into the Imperial Avenue house, a property owned by his stepmother. He seemed to have recaptured a semblance of normality, working in a local factory and even starting a relationship. But within the confines of that house, a gruesome reality was unfolding, shattering any illusion of Sowell's reformed character. As we delve deeper into the chilling narrative of Anthony Sowell, we'll uncover the horrifying secrets that lay hidden within 12205 Imperial Avenue and reveal the true extent of his monstrous acts. The facade of normality was about to crumble, exposing the fiendish creature that lurked beneath. The city of Cleveland in the mid-2000s was a place burdened by economic hardship and social inequality. Once a bustling industrial hub, Cleveland had transformed into a city with one of the highest poverty rates in the United States. The city's east side, where Sowell's Imperial Avenue house was located, bore the brunt of this downturn. It was a neighborhood marked by vacant homes and dilapidated buildings, a stark reminder of better times long past. Amidst this bleak landscape, the Imperial Avenue house stood inconspicuously, its outward appearance hiding the horrors within. Cleveland's social climate at the time was also marked by systemic neglect and a deeply entrenched racial divide. The city's marginalized communities, particularly those on the east side, often found themselves overlooked by law enforcement and social services. This societal blind spot inadvertently acted as a protective shield for Sowell, allowing his crimes to go unnoticed for years. The Imperial Avenue house itself was a 2-story structure with a grimy facade and boarded-up windows, nestled within a labyrinth of similar-looking homes. The house was nondescript, blending seamlessly into the neighborhood's urban decay. Inside, its rooms were cluttered and unkempt, with a foul odor that could be detected from the sidewalk. Yet the house held an eerie allure for the area's dispossessed women, who were drawn to Sowell's offers of a place to stay or a free meal. Sowell's activities largely went unnoticed in the neighborhood. He was seen as an odd, solitary figure who mostly kept to himself. Despite his previous criminal record, few could imagine the atrocities being committed within the walls of the house. The community was largely in the dark about the grim secrets of 12205 Imperial Avenue. The year 2005 marked the beginning of Sowell's reign of terror. Though he had a job at a local factory, There was a sinister undercurrent to his life. He had developed a deep-seated hatred towards women, a sentiment that would fuel his violent acts. Over the next 4 years, Sowell would descend further into his dark impulses, leaving a trail of death and despair in his wake. This was the backdrop against which Anthony Sowell committed his heinous crimes. A city struggling with economic and social issues, a neighborhood blighted by neglect, and a community unaware of the monster in their midst. It was within this setting that the Imperial Avenue murders would unfold, casting a dark shadow over Cleveland for years to come. The first known victim of Sowell was a woman named Crystal Dozier. Dozier, 38 years old and a mother of 7, disappeared in May 2007. She was last seen after she had dropped her son off at school. Crystal was a vivacious woman, known for her warm smile and her love for her children. The circumstances of her life, navigating the challenges of poverty and addiction, made her an easy target for a predator like Sowell. Around the same time, Tonya Carmichael, a 52-year-old mother and grandmother, vanished without a trace. Carmichael, despite her own struggles with substance abuse, was described as a caring family woman who always made sure her children and grandchildren were taken care of. Her vanishing was abrupt, leaving her family in a state of bewilderment and growing concern. As the months went by, more women began to disappear. Michelle Mason, a 45-year-old woman with a bright spirit and a deep love for her family, went missing in October 2007. Imelda Hunter, a mother of 3 with a vivacious personality, disappeared in 2008. Janice Webb, known for her infectious laughter and friendly demeanor, was also reported missing that year. The circumstances surrounding these disappearances were eerily similar. All of the women were from marginalized backgrounds, many grappling with substance abuse and poverty. Their disappearances, though alarming, were often not investigated thoroughly due to societal prejudice and systemic bias. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only their loved ones in a state of fear and uncertainty. In September 2009, another woman named Latundra Billups reported being assaulted by Sowell. She had managed to escape and went to the police, but her report was not immediately followed up on. This was a missed opportunity that could have exposed Sowell's horrific crimes sooner. It wasn't until October 2009, when yet another woman escaped from Sowell's house and reported her assault, that the authorities began to take notice. This woman's harrowing account of her ordeal led to the police finally searching Sowell's house. What they found inside would send shockwaves through Cleveland and beyond, unmasking the true face of the quiet man from Imperial Avenue. The woman's account was a chilling revelation of the horrors that had been unfolding unobserved on Imperial Avenue. She recounted being lured into Sowell's house, just as many others before her, and facing an unimaginable ordeal. Her courage to escape and report her assault was a turning point in the case. With her testimony, law enforcement finally had the impetus to launch a thorough investigation into Sowell's activities. The search of Sowell's home began on October 29, 2009. As law enforcement officers approached the house, they were hit with an overwhelming stench. As they stepped inside, they were met with a sight of unimaginable horror. The bodies of 11 women were found scattered throughout the house and yard, all in varying stages of decomposition. The victims' remains revealed a pattern of violence and domination that painted a chilling picture of Sowell's monstrous acts. Each victim was strangled, their bodies carefully hidden within the house or buried in shallow graves in the yard. The decomposed remains made it challenging to identify the victims, but through dental records, tattoos, and personal belongings, investigators were able to confirm the identities of 9 of the 11 women found. They were the same women who had been reported missing over the past 2 years. News of the gruesome discovery sent shockwaves through the community and the nation. The horror that had been unfolding on Imperial Avenue was finally exposed to the world. The residents of Cleveland were left grappling with the reality of a serial killer in their midst, and questions began to surface about the handling of the missing persons cases. The discovery prompted an intensive investigation into Sowell's past. Law enforcement officers worked tirelessly to piece together the timeline of the murders, combing through Sowell's history for any signs of his violent tendencies. They found that Sowell's crimes dated back to his release from prison in 2005. Over the course of 4 years, he had lured, assaulted, and murdered 11 women without detection. The investigation revealed a damning picture of systemic failures and societal bias. The victims, all black women from disadvantaged backgrounds, had been largely ignored by society and law enforcement. Their disappearances were not given the attention they deserved, allowing Sowell to continue his horrifying spree unimpeded. As the gruesome details of the case began to unfold, the spotlight was turned on the Cleveland Police Department. The public demanded answers as to how such a horrific series of crimes had gone unnoticed. The department faced widespread criticism for its handling of the missing persons cases, leading to a closer examination of its practices and procedures. The failures in the Sowell case underscored the urgent need for reform and accountability within the system. As the narrative of Anthony Sowell's heinous crimes unfolded, the focus shifted towards the perpetrator himself. Who was this man, and how had he managed to operate under the radar for so long? Anthony Sowell was no stranger to the criminal justice system. He had previously spent 15 years in prison for a vicious rape committed in 1989. Upon his release in 2005, he seemingly managed to reintegrate into society. He held a steady job, attended church, and by all appearances, was leading a normal life. But beneath this facade, a monstrous predator lurked. To the unsuspecting eye, Sowell was merely a quiet neighbor, living an unremarkable life in a dilapidated white house on Cleveland's Imperial Avenue. But behind closed doors, he was a serial killer, preying on the vulnerable and marginalized, exploiting the systemic blind spots that allowed his victims to slip through the cracks unnoticed. His modus operandi became clear as investigators delved into his past. He lured his victims with promises of alcohol or drugs, exploiting their vulnerabilities. Once ensnared, they fell prey to his violent tendencies. Each woman was strangled, their bodies hidden away as if to erase their existence. The psychological profile that emerged was one of a classic psychopath, manipulative, remorseless, and possessing an inflated sense of self-worth. Sowell saw himself as invincible, believing he could evade justice indefinitely. His carefully constructed persona fooled even those closest to him, enabling him to perpetrate his crimes undetected. Sowell's actions were further enabled by societal biases. His victims, all African American women struggling with addiction or homelessness, were largely invisible to society. Their disappearances were not deemed urgent or important, allowing Sowell to continue his murderous spree with impunity. Sowell's case serves as a chilling reminder of the deadly intersection between individual psychopathy and societal indifference. His ability to operate undetected for so long was not solely due to his cunning or manipulation, but also the systemic failures that allowed him to remain invisible. The same failures that rendered his victims invisible in life also made them invisible in death, their absence unnoticed and uninvestigated until it was far too late. The breakthrough in the case finally came in October 2009, when a woman named Gladys Wade flagged down a police car, claiming that Sowell had attacked her. She led the officers to Sowell's home on Imperial Avenue, where they were hit with an overpowering stench. Initially mistaken for the smell of decay from a nearby sausage factory, it soon became clear that the source was something far more sinister. Upon obtaining a search warrant, police began a comprehensive search of Sowell's house. One by one, they discovered the remains of 11 women hidden throughout the property. The bodies, some of which had been there for years, were found in various states of decomposition. Some were buried in shallow graves in the backyard, others hidden in crawl spaces beneath the house, while others were left in plain sight, discarded like trash in the upstairs living area. In the basement, they found a bucket filled with a horrifying mix of dirt and human flesh. Nearby, a makeshift assembly of tools suggested a grim process of dismemberment. This was not just a house, but a house of horrors, a stage for Sowell's twisted fantasies. The evidence was overwhelming, but it was forensic science that would play a crucial role in confirming Sowell's guilt. DNA samples taken from the victims matched Sowell's DNA profile. Additionally, a discarded napkin found on the property, which Sowell had used, provided the incontrovertible link between him and the crimes. The napkin bore traces of Sowell's DNA, which matched the samples taken from the victims. Testimonies from survivors were equally damning. They spoke of being lured into Sowell's home, intoxicated, and then brutally assaulted. Their accounts matched the MO that investigators had pieced together, providing further substantiation of the charges against Sowell. The pivotal moment in the investigation came when a woman named Vanessa Gay agreed to testify. Gay had survived an encounter with Sowell, escaping from his house of horrors in 2008. Her vivid, harrowing account of the ordeal was a key element in the case against Sowell. Her courage to come forward, despite fear and societal stigma, played an instrumental role in securing his conviction. The case of Anthony Sowell had finally come full circle. The layers of deception had been peeled away, revealing the monster that lurked beneath. The evidence, both physical and testimonial, painted a chilling picture of a man whose destructive path had gone unchecked for years. Following the discovery of the disturbing evidence, Anthony Sowell was apprehended on October 31, 2009. The news of his arrest sent shockwaves through the community and the nation as a whole as the grim details of his crimes came to light. It was a stark reminder that monsters existed, not just in the realm of horror movies, but also in the quiet corners of the everyday world. The trial commenced on June 6, 2011, with charges including multiple counts of murder, rape, and kidnapping. The courtroom was steeped in tension as Sowell, dressed in a neatly pressed suit, entered. His calm demeanor was in stark contrast to the monstrous actions he was being accused of. The prosecution presented a meticulously built case, supported by the physical evidence, DNA matches, and survivor testimonies. Every session was a chilling revelation of Sowell's actions, each detail more horrifying than the last. The defense attempted to argue that the women had willingly entered Sowell's home and that they had died of drug overdoses. The jury, however, was unmoved by this argument. The surviving victims' testimonies painted a clear picture of deception and assault, while the forensic evidence and the conditions in which the women's remains were found unequivocally pointed to murder. Vanessa Gay's testimony was a turning point in the trial. The court held its breath as she recounted her horrifying experience in Sowell's house. Her words painted a vivid, haunting picture that left an indelible mark on everyone present. On July 22, 2011, after less than 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Sowell guilty on 82 counts, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. The courtroom was awash with a palpable sense of relief and grim satisfaction as the verdict was read out. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. The public reaction was a mix of relief, horror, and outrage. The horrific nature of Sowell's crimes had shaken the community and the nation. The case had exposed the vulnerabilities of marginalized women in society and sparked discussions on how societal neglect and bias had allowed a predator like Sowell to act undetected for years. The trial of Anthony Sowell was an unsettling window into the darkest corners of human nature. His conviction marked the end of a reign of terror that had claimed the lives of 11 women, but it also served as a stark reminder of the monsters that can lurk within our midst. Peeling back the layers of Anthony Sowell's life, one cannot ignore the potential factors that may have contributed to his transformation into a serial killer. Sowell's upbringing was fraught with trauma and abuse, which many psychologists argue can influence one's propensity for violence later in life. Born to a single mother, Sowell was one of 7 children. His mother was known to be abusive, frequently beating her children. Sowell and his siblings were also sexually abused by a female family member, fostering an environment where violence and sexual exploitation were normalized. At the age of 19, Sowell joined the Marine Corps, a decision that further exposed him to violence, albeit in a legalized, structured environment. Psychologists who have studied Sowell's case have postulated several theories about his motivation. Some suggest that his murders were a form of revenge against the women in his life who had mistreated or hurt him. Others believe that Sowell was driven by a desire for power and control, with his victims representing the most vulnerable and marginalized individuals in society. While incarcerated, Sowell was examined by forensic psychologists who found that he exhibited signs of several personality disorders. Dr. Christine Hutchinson, a clinical and forensic psychologist, diagnosed Sowell with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, sexual sadism disorder, and alcohol use disorder. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is characterized by a preoccupation with orderliness and control, which could explain Sowell's meticulousness in his crimes. Sexual sadism. Disorder is characterized by deriving sexual pleasure from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation onto others. Alcohol use disorder, on the other hand, can impair judgment and increase impulsivity, potentially exacerbating these other conditions. It's important to remember, however, that these disorders alone do not make a murderer. Millions of people around the world live with these conditions without turning to violence. It's the combination of these disorders, coupled with Sowell's traumatic and abusive upbringing, that may have triggered his horrific actions. While these insights into Sowell's psychology may not provide solace to the victims and their families, they do offer a window into the mind of a killer, and an opportunity for society to learn, intervene, and hopefully prevent similar horrors from happening in the future. In the wake of the gruesome revelations and the subsequent trial, the Imperial Avenue neighborhood, where Sowell's House of Horrors stood, was left scarred and traumatized. The community, predominantly African American and low income, had to grapple with the fact that a serial killer had lived among them, preying on their most vulnerable members. The loss was immense, and the sorrow was palpable. However, it was not only grief that enveloped the community, but also anger and a sense of betrayal. Many felt that the police and the justice system had failed them. The fact that numerous women had reported crimes committed by Sowell, yet their pleas had gone largely unheeded, sparked outrage. It was the catalyst for a much-needed dialogue about systemic racism and the devaluation of marginalized people within society. For the survivors and the families of the victims, the aftermath was a long and painful journey. Many turned to advocacy and activism, channeling their grief and anger into meaningful change. They sought to ensure that the tragic experiences of their loved ones would not be in vain, but would serve as a poignant reminder of the need for justice reform and better support for marginalized communities. Vanessa Gay, one of Sowell's survivors, has become a vocal advocate for victims of sexual violence and systemic neglect. She's used her experience as a platform to highlight the intersection of racism, sexism, and classism that allowed Sowell's crimes to go unnoticed for so long. Her courage and resilience have been a beacon of hope for many others who have experienced similar traumas. The media coverage of the case also had a significant impact, bringing national attention to the issue of violence against marginalized women. The case underscored the deadly consequences of societal indifference towards this vulnerable population. It prompted a reevaluation of police response to missing persons reports involving women from low-income backgrounds or those struggling with addiction. The legacy of the Anthony Sowell case is thus one of pain, but also of profound change. It has prompted a reassessment of societal attitudes towards marginalized communities and a renewed commitment to ensuring that every person's life is valued and protected. It has served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of indifference and neglect, and the urgent need for reform within the criminal justice system. While the wounds inflicted by Anthony Sowell may never fully heal, the courage and resilience of the survivors and the community have shown that even in the face of such horrific violence, the human spirit can rise, advocate for change, and seek justice. The legacy of this case is a testament to that enduring strength and a call to action for us all to do better. Yet, even as we reflect on the profound changes prompted by the Anthony Sowell case, a number of unanswered questions and haunting implications continue to linger. There are chilling aspects of the case that remain shrouded in mystery, and the implications of these unresolved details continue to reverberate through our collective consciousness. One of the most confounding questions revolves around the length of time Sowell was able to commit his horrific crimes undetected. The grim discovery of 11 bodies at his home in 2009 sparked outrage and disbelief, but also begged the question, how did Sowell's atrocities remain concealed for so long in a densely populated urban neighborhood? What does this say about the societal blind spots that enabled such monstrous acts to go unnoticed? These questions, though uncomfortable, force us to confront the harsh realities of systemic neglect and indifference. Then there's the haunting question of the unidentified victims. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, some of Sowell's victims remain nameless. This chilling fact underscores the grim reality of the lives he preyed upon. Women who, due to their marginalized status, were easily overlooked and forgotten. This unresolved detail is a stark reminder of the invisibility and devaluation suffered by these women even in death. There are also alternative theories that continue to circulate, adding another layer of complexity to an already convoluted case. Some believe that Sowell may have committed more murders than he was held accountable for. Though these theories remain speculative, they nonetheless contribute to the haunting legacy of the case, amplifying its disturbing implications and the urgent need for systemic reform. The story of Anthony Sowell is one of unremitting horror, but it is also a story of resilience and a demand for change. As we grapple with the lingering questions and implications of the case, we are reminded of the urgent need to ensure that every individual, regardless of their socioeconomic status or personal circumstances, is seen, heard, and protected. The haunting legacy of the case serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of societal indifference and systemic failure, and the pressing obligation we all share to prevent such horrors from recurring. Thanks for listening. This has been Serial Killers with Ben Carter. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.